Good afternoon, everyone. We will be having a discourse today which concerns the youth and the environment. And as we all know, Greta Thunberg gained notoriety in recent history because she has sparked the conversation on climate change and as part of the global conversation. As we all know, Greta Thunberg is a Swedish climate activist who gained notoriety as SONA Magazine's Person of the Year last 2019. And she also conducted a shame campaign against frequent flyers of airplanes. According to Business Insider, in fact, her efforts include Fridays for Future movement and school strike for climate change. With us today are two notable people in this endeavor in the Philippines. Sir Albert Magalang, he is presently the head of the climate change of the Environmental Management Bureau or EMB of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources or DENR, and concurrently head secretariat of the Philippine Designated National Authority or CDM under the Kyoto Protocol to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. He is also the DNR's regular representative in the Philippine delegation as a country negotiator in the UNFCCC Climate Change Tasks and as the national representative in the ASEAN Working Group and in the UN Environment Assembly. He was also elected as one of the UN regional representatives of the UNFCCC DNA Forum, and his past designations at the EMB have enabled him to engage and to hone his expertise in the skills and on this particular topic. May we give a round of applause to Sir Albert. Thank you, everyone. And now let's move on to our other guest, Miss Razel Morales. She is youth leader from the National Youth Commission, and she was and still a member of the 12th NYP chairperson for Committee on Environment. She's also a YSEALI academic fellow at the University of Montana for the fall of 2019, and she's an alumna of the University of the Philippines, Visayas, with a degree in BA Political Science. We give a round of applause to Ms. Razel. And our two co-panelists, Cristina Clarito, a senior high school student from the University of Nueva Cáceres, and Amadeus Kiawi from the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, so since we know each other, I suppose we can start the conversation on the current state of climate change. What are your thoughts on the youth's role in the fight against climate change? Are we doing enough?
I think in terms of the youth participation, you can see it in terms of, yes, we're doing something, but in answering your question of doing enough, I think we can do more. But the question is, who is to blame? Sino yung i-blame natin if we're talking about the lack of youth participation or not empowering the youth enough to participate? Because talking about all these facts, you're listening to this, and even Greta admittedly said that hearing all these facts made her depressed. So there's a correlation between all these challenges happening in our generation. Well, I'm just 23, so I believe I'm in the middle of Gen Z and millennials and the start of the millennials. In our generation specifically, we want to act on it, but we should be assisted in this fight. This is an intergenerational battle. Although the peak of such challenge was and is present under this generation, especially with Yolanda happening. And when I was in grade 6, yung naranasan ko naman is yung Typhoon Frank, we need to capacitate them. That's always the battle cry. Because baka sabihin ng iba na, ay, yung mga kabataan, madaming reklamo. There's a reason why nagre-reklamo kami. Because we want to do something and we need to be capacitated to do that function. Kung tayo ang pag-asa ng bayan, the question is, what hope is the earlier generation also giving us to be the pag-asa ng bayan?
That's a very good point, by the way. And speaking of the youth and the kabataan, no, Amadeus, remember that you are part of the SK, right? And what are your projects or efforts to make climate change a relevant issue to your generation? Ano yung mga projects?
Well, at the SK, we have this thing called the Centers of Participation,
Mm-hmm.
which those specific programs po is based on the national agenda of our country by the president. So there's the matter of education, security, youth development, sports, and the youth and the environment. So far, here in my SK Council at Lower Bikutan, we haven't had much focus on the climate agenda because we haven't thought of a mechanism to engage with our youths here. What we did was the usual stuff during our past years in the position. But actually, it wasn't for COVID-19. We were planning to have a seminar with a few selected youths here with the NDRMC. But unfortunately, it was postponed because of this pandemic.
Uh, so this is still ongoing, right? You will still push through with that.
Yes, we will. And for the meantime, what we can proactively do during this crisis is we participate in the weekly cleanup drive mandated by our barangay. So it's a voluntary work.
So, given that the youth is quite interested in this topic, no? How about you, Chris? Do you think your location being from Naga City, which is far from the metropolis, no? Is it a factor when it comes to your contribution to this kind of issue?
I think we're all concerned naman po, as far as I know, because especially Bicol is such a place prone to storms. We're actually close to Samar, which was that eye of Yolanda, and the weather is actually very, very fickle right now. But I'm not seeing much from our governance right now for actions to climate change. But I do believe they're doing something.
In your opinion, may magagawa pa ba tayo na efforts kasi kulang based on the context of what you said?
Of course, yes po. What we're doing is near the bare minimum of what we should be doing to fight it.
I agree. Paul, if I may.
Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
I agree with Christina, and also I empathize with Amadeus. We've been as the youth, no, as the chairperson for the Committee of Environment, we forwarded different policies or lobbies both in Congress and Senate, and also at least in my capacity as the convener for Region 6, that means Iloilo, Bacolod, Capiz, Rojas, and all other places doon. We've been doing a lot. The youth's been doing a lot in our volunteer capacity, may it be part of our barangay, which is considered as a frontliner in this endeavor, no, in fighting climate change and calling for climate justice. In the sector of SKs, yun sabi ni Amadeo, sa sector naman ng private or individual na kabataan, nandun rin yun. So, makikita talaga natin na ang kabataan may ginagawa. So, sinabi ni Christine kanina, baka ang kailangan natin is something to step up, and that should be the government stepping up in their mandate, specifically the National Youth Commission, that should be forwarding all our calls for climate justice, not only forwarding our calls and initiatives for climate justice to the higher table in the higher policy-making bodies, such as coordinating with DNR, with Climate Change Commission, and other relevant institutions in our government. No, pero parang nakikita natin, if the National Youth Commission is the front or is the representative of this administration to the youth, parang it tells us something, and this is how it appeals to us. It appeals na parang hindi tayo ang kabataan ang priority ng National Youth Commission, but at the same time, kung hindi kabataan, mas lalo nang hindi yung climate change, hindi yung climate justice, no? Sabi ko nga kanina, tayo ang pag-asa ng bayan, pero what hope is there left for us if ganito yung messaging coming from the higher ups? And I feel for my kapwa kabataan because ako, if hindi nyo natatanong, I worked my way up to gain my education and to speak this way. Bawat piso, sila po, may pera po sila. If I may share, they earn more than 100,000 pesos per month to do their mandate. Pero nafe-feel po ba natin sila? I think that's a question that needs to be answered para hindi po tayo iikot sa usapin ng tanong na may effort ba na ginagawa? Certainly, there are efforts. Nakikita natin. Pero anong ginagawa ng other side of the community or of the other side of the society, which is the government?
What I may also can share my thoughts on this. Kasi I've been working closely with the youth, at least ako sa climate negotiations. In fact, for so many years, working with the youth representatives, youth delegation, has been a successful one because we were able to push yung mga elements in the Paris Agreement. We were able to push yung sections about young people, especially pushing for the Article 6 of the Convention, which tackle about education, training, public awareness, public participation, and public access to information. In fact, I was a negotiator on this, and we were successful because we have a lot of support from the youth sector. Kaya talagang one of the sectors that are until now that have been so active in the negotiations are the young people. So, basing my experience working with them, very assertive dahil they have right education based on their experience. Meron silang awareness about existing climate and environmental laws, which I think I do agree with Russell that kailangan magkaroon din ng knowledge ang ating mga youth sector on that one talaga, on the science-based or evidence-based kind of information on climate and saka environmental laws. So, kasi without this knowledge, ang problema, Paul, it can be difficult to access opportunities unless these individuals or yung sinasabi natin SK organization is already well-versed in finding connections with government agencies or officials. Otherwise, masasayang yung pakikipag-engage with government agencies kung hindi mo alam. If you don't know what kind of specific initiatives that the young people would like to work with the government. So, isa pa on the government side naman, para so that we can engage fully yung participation ng young people, we have to see that mayroon pa na popularization of the climate and environmental issues. Kasi kung minsan from national agencies, parang it's not so interesting ba ang pag-present. Yeah, there should be some sort of maging creative in getting awareness, from the young people. So kailangan may may art in communicating climate change. In fact, that's a very difficult challenge for us. Isa sa mga challenges mga climate negotiators kung paano i-communicate yung mga treaties, yung mga outcomes ng negotiations at the UN level, translate that into national action. Diyan naman nagkukulang kasi there is may disconnect. So, ang makaka-connect lang yan kasi most are the catalysts of change. Sino-sino to? The youth. Actually, silang malaking role nila in linking this, in translating yung mga international treaties, international action.
Apo, sir. I think all of us here have a consensus na ang climate change is an issue. But any one of you can answer this question. How do we address the dissent of the people who are not really believing in this kind of problem, no? Kasi meron tayo naalala natin nung 80s ang uso yung ozone layer depletion daw. And in the current climate change discourse, paglaban nga dun sa climate change kasi palakas na ng palakas yung effects na sinabi nga ni Sir Albert and na experience ni Chris at ni Miss Russell, no? Anyone can answer. How do we encourage people who think this is just a hoax?
Paul, if I may also share my thoughts on that. Actually, the challenge of effective communication, effective information dissemination about the science behind these environmental issues. So if we can only be effective enough to popularize, to simplify the science behind all these environmental issues, baka it can still help in raising awareness or consciousness among the other sectors of the society. So, ang nangyayari is we're learning the hard way. Like for example, kung wala ang Yolanda, we won't be able to feel kung ano talaga yung effects ng climate change. Kasi right there and then, doon mismo, ikaw yung naging victim eh. Hard way. Nalalaman natin na this is daluyong pala, this is storm surge pala, aggravated by climate change. Yun, ang isa sa mga kulangan siguro.
Amadeus, mabalik lang ako dun sa SK projects na sinasabi mo kanina. Do you think mas may challenge kayo compared kay, say, Greta, na si Greta kasi has gained like a huge traction, right? No? So, do you think it's a challenge for you? Is socio-economic factor a role in the fight against climate change?
Yes, I think. Kasi ang environment and climate change is a existential crisis. Sa tingin ko talaga, is a challenge. Lalo na mapayut or the general public sees climate change as a hoax. Kasi sa tingin ko, they are trapped within this capitalist bubble na ang iniisip lang nila is yung mga relevant sa buhay nila, money, survival, daily, makaraos lang, diba? So, I think ang challenge for us is paano namin may i-integrate yung, at least yung mga nire-represent muna namin, which is the youth. How can we engage the youth with proactive projects pagdating sa environment? So, baby steps, we do it slowly but surely, like establishing trash bins around streets, mga portable faucets. We also encourage them sa mga contests, halimbawa, yung mga recycling contest, ganon. So, in those simple ways, I think, mga steps ng SK kung paano i-engage yung youth dito sa issue na to.
How about you, Chris? Sa smaller communities, dun sa mga far-flung areas or provincial cities, what do you think is the effort that we can take to spark greater discourse?
Actually po, I've seen a research in doing adaptability to climate change for farmers in other parts of Bicol. And I also researched kung why can't people accept that climate change is happening. And what's interesting is I found out na it's actually a clash between facts and values. If you believe in climate change, you say, oh, the earth is changing, we are going to be affected by it, we need to do something. Pero if you don't believe it, what your explanation would be is, I'm affected by this doesn't go to my by my values, like my money will be affected by this, like for other capitalists, like what Amadeus said. And we're actually making steps, but it's hindered by what our values are, because these facts are blocking them for what we want.
How about you, Ms. Russell? Your profile that you are a fellow, no? What's your take about our battle against climate change? Do we need a figure like Greta to have a greater conversation? Yes.
This is a very loaded question at kailangan nating himay-himayin ito, At sobrang ganda na ng punto na sinabi na Amadeus tsaka ni Christina kasi nalagay na yung sabi niya kapitalismo. So, may problema sa sistema. Why do we blame people then? Like, bakit yung naratibo natin sa kung bakit may climate change or kung bakit nasisira yung environment is individual. Na, kaya nasisira yung environment kasi walang disiplina. Yung naratibo kasi ng disiplina, hindi yun kinoconsider yung socio-economic problems ng mga tao. Kasi sinasabi lang natin na, sinisira ng mga poor people or people on the ground yung environment without considering kung may alternative ba sila. At katulad ng single-use plastics, we blame people for using single-use plastics. I am an advocate for zero waste and lessening single-use plastics, both personal, collective, tsaka systemic on the policy level. Pero kung walang alternatibo, hindi yun mangyayari. There should be an accessible alternative. That's one. And stop with this narrative of discipline, okay? We should empower and we should capacitate everyone that's on the ground. Bakit yung mga vulnerable pa yung sinisisi natin for not helping? There's a reason for that. Ako, Sir Albert, ngayon nyo lang po ako nakilala, ano po? Kahit ang dami ko na pong ginagawa. Tama po ba? Kasi isa po akong probinsyana at usually, gawa po tayo, gawa. Ako before po ako nandito, Let's Do It Philippines Regional Coordinator po ako. Nagpupulot ng basura. Pero from that, very important yung mga small changes kasi it made me question, saan nanggagaling ang basura na pinupulot ko? Ganon kasimple yung tanong ko before. So, sige, I realized from an individual perspective na nagpupulot ako ng end trash to saan nanggagaling yung trash ko at bakit may ganito na production ng trash. Nasagot ko siya na may problema sa sistema. Hindi tao ang problema minsan eh. Of course, nag-i-enable din tayo. Pero there's a big factor yung environment. Hindi lang environment na puno, pero environment, when I'm referring to environment, it also talks system. Sistema ng kapitalismo, sistema ng greed, sistema ng kuha lang tayo ng kuha from our environment, walang balik. So that's one na magandang sinabi rin ni Amadeus. Kaya tayo nagkaka-existential crisis. Kasi kung ganun yung, kasi hindi naman ganun eh. Yung thesis ko po kasi, it's about mining. Tsaka, ine-edit ngayon, I hope I can share it all to everyone soon. Nung unang panahon pala, sa mga indigenous people natin, iba yung paningin sa environment. Ang paningin natin sa environment, isa tayo with our environment. That's why we take care of our environment because it's a part of us. So that's why we don't take and take and take and take. That's why hindi na deplete yung resources natin. Pero iba ngayon eh, iba sa sistema ngayon. May sistema na mali at kailangan natin i-address. And I recognize Christina and Amadeus for putting that on the table in our discussion. Second, you asked me, Paul, is socio-economic yung kalagayan natin bilang tao sa level natin sa lipunan, may apekto ba yon sa youth participation natin in combating climate change? Yes, certainly. As I've said, kaya ako nandito at kaya ngayon nyo lang ako naririnig kahit sabihin na natin madami akong nagawa in my community. It's because centralized pa rin yung efforts natin or centralized yung paningin natin sa mga efforts lang sa Manila. Kailangan natin i-highlight lahat ng efforts from Bicol, lahat ng efforts from other communities, for example. That's one. Second, kaya hindi nyo ako naririnig kasi patayan ako na nagtatrabaho para sa edukasyon ko. Kung wala akong pangkain ngayong araw, paano ko pa iisipin ng bukas? Much more yung climate change, which is 5 to 10 years from now, fully ma-experience natin, no, na sea level rise and all those effects na for sure Sir Albert can further list down to all of us. So those are the reasons. And as much as I recognize the efforts of Greta for speaking up, for empowering us, it needs to be put into the table that the reason why third world countries, youth can't be on the same level of Greta because nahihirapan pa nga tayo mabuhay ngayon. What more isipin pa yung bukas natin, di ba?
Yes, yes.
So climate change and climate justice issue is a human rights issue. At tama si Christina na it's about facts and values. Kasi usually, yung mga tao, hindi yan mag-a-act upon kung hindi sila personally naaapektuhan. So, sabi ni Sir Albert, there needs to be an education. First, we have to shift our narrative. Hindi to about disiplina. Hindi to yung naratibo ng disiplina. Naratibo ito ng sistema. Naratibo ito ng accessibility to alternatives. Because ako, alam mo, kasama ko ay meron kaming tiyangge. Ayoko i-blame yung nanay ko na may tiyangge kami na sobrang daming tingi-tingi. Kasi yun yung way na makaka-earn kami at yun ang way na punta niya ako sa eskwelahan. Kaya ako nakaka-speak to everyone right now is because I was able to fight for a present. Sana hindi siya privilege but a right to everyone. Because if that right is given to everyone can speak up and everyone will fight.
Ang ganda na yung sinabi ni Russell, Actually, yun ang sinasabi ko palagi sa mga youth delegate. Every time that you deliver your Philippine position from the youth sector, not just going what the countries have already said, because as youth delegates, we don't expect that from you. Why focus on lost opportunities? There will be climate change. Focus on that. Yun ang sabihin natin na because of so many itong mga adverse effects ng climate change, there will be sigurado na may mga opportunities ang young people na hindi na ma-experience or ma-achieve because of this environmental effects. Ngayon, isa pa, tama si Russell na malalim ang environmental issues. Kaya nga, minsan puro nagpo-focus yung information, education, communication campaign on traditional environmental issues. Like for example, may plastic pollution, may kalat. O sige, mag-clean up tayo. Merong deforestation. O sige, mag-plant tayo. Let's plant trees. Pero dapat palawigin pa ang narrative na bakit may plastic? Nandyan ang plastic, no? Plastic products. Bakit nandyan? Siguro dahil mababa ang cost ng raw material, which is fossil-based fuel. Na parang kaya mababa ang plastic raw material dahil merong support doon sa oil companies. Deforestation, may problema, most likely sa land use, those things. Ang gusto ko lang i-point out is that malalim ang problema ng environmental issues na dapat hindi maging traditional ang pagtingin doon. Hindi. Ano ba ang talagang pinaka-problema kung bakit merong environmental degradation? Baka naman ang problema ay poverty.
So, given na malalim talaga yung issue na to, no, hindi siya, kumbaga, sabi nga ni Russell kanina, no, madaming factors. Hindi lang siya systematic yung problema natin sa environment. Given that, and since so far yun naman yung consensus nating lahat, on a final note to wrap up this discussion, no, do you think we need a central figure, like a face, gaya ni Greta dito sa Pilipinas na context, to mobilize yung Filipino youth? Or is it like small steps along the way and magiging organic siya? What do you think about it?
Hindi siguro isang face or isang mukha. Kasi they're all around eh. Yung mga champions eh. Environmental champions are all around eh. Nandito sila lahat. Nakikita mo sila. Yun nga sabi ni Russell. Hindi napapansin kasi they're also working on their priorities. But they're all here. I mean, nandyan sila. Tawag ka lang ba na may Greta tayo sa Pilipinas? Yung bang nasa isipan mo, Paul?
Actually, sir, parang challenge natin yung notion, no? Kasi kahit si Greta, madami siyang dissenters. Pero yun naman yung consensus natin, meron ng problem sa environment. How about you, Russell? Can you be like a potential face figure for this kind of endeavor, no? Or do you think it's not really the person in front of the camera, or it's more on the cause na kailangan nating i-intensify? What do you think?
I think, Paul, it's not a black and white. It's not a person behind the camera. It's not a person in front of the camera. Nandito ako because magaling ako mag-ingay. Pero the reason why I'm here is because there are people behind me that rallies with the same cause. So we understand it that there's a need for a face because people like that. I mean, we like tangible things. We like idols. We like celebrities. And that's understandable. That's just being human. And that's just understanding our capacity to understand things. So the reason why Greta is very important, as much as she can improve on different levels of how she represents the youth, and her representation kasi nanggaling pa rin siya sa first world country at kahit hindi siya pumunta ng eskwelahan, sorry ha, pero okay pa rin siya. Ako, if I stop my work, may mga kapatid akong pinapaaral, may nanay ako na tinatry namin ayusin yung bahay namin para hindi na kami laging binabaha. I'm willing to be a face of this, but I think that's not a question that needs to be answered by me. Because my legitimacy as a maingay na bata na nagpo-forward ng cause should come from a movement. I'm not here as an individual. It should come from a movement. The movement is organic. I'm willing to help in my capacity. And what is my capacity? And listen, Christina and Amadeus, because your capacity as you're there in your community and you're as an SK official, that's very important. Stop thinking of how can I be a Greta? Think of what can I do in my own community. Ano yung strength ko? Kung may weakness ka, maghanap ka ng kabataan na will help you in that weakness. Ako, mahina ako sa technical na bagay. Kaya nanghihingi ako sa friends natin kanina ng technical na mga reports para maingayan ko pa. So yun lang yung sinasabi ko. There might be, but that should be organic. That should never be like a PR stunt lang na may haharap. Ako maingay ako. So certainly I will help in ways that I can. And of course, I'm assuming Christina and Amadeus will do their best in their communities. And we're here to support everyone.
That's very insightful. How about you, Amadeus? Anything you want to impart?
Yes, I agree with Ate Russell. It's part of our Pino tradition, yung idolism. Yung naghahanap tayo ng simbolo, which I think climate change, hindi dapat ganon. It should be everyone's concern. It's a universal existential threat, as I've said. Dapat hindi lang to shoulder ng isang icon. It should be a movement, multidimensional. I think malinawan na yung hindi lang yung mga youth, sana pati yung mundo, that climate change is an urgent threat to our very existence, na kung hindi natin titigilan yung exploitive capitalism, now walang alam gawin kung hindi manira ng natural resources at ubusin ng yaman natin, both natural and physically. We will run out immediately if we don't change the system.
Thanks for that insightful comment. No, how about you, Chris? What's your final take on this issue?
On it po, what I'm seeing is we're looking for a light. It's like fireflies attracted to light. We have our own light, but we are attracted to something very much emitting more light than us. But if we unite, we could be that light. We can do something about it. We just need more support and more people to join us so that we can show off to the world what we can do to stop this. So in my opinion, we don't necessarily need a Greta, but we need to unite.
How about you, sir? Any final thoughts, Sir Albert?
Yeah, of course, I really have to emphasize this kasi having worked with the youth delegates dun sa UN. We have the young ghosts. Sila actually ang tumutulong sa mga negotiators. Kasi nandun ang kanilang energy, nandun yung basta na bata ka, mabilis kang tumakbo, mabilis magtrabaho. Napakalawak ng kaisipan, nandyan yung creativity. Siyempre, demanding kasi ako sa ganyan. I would really appreciate that, and I would like to work still with them kasi ang laki ng ang nakakatulong sa pagmumulat ng kanilang kaisipan at sa pagpalalim mismo ng kanilang mga pananaw, yung mga kanilang mga posisyon sa mga pagtanaw sa mga issues na to. But of course, hindi lang pwedeng youth na lang. About other sectors. Kaya palagi sinasabi natin the whole of society approach, yung mga ganong palagi na naririnig natin sa mga sinasabi ng mga government. Na kung minsan ay hindi naman nangyayari. Kasi puro pronouncement. So kailangan isa katuparan, gawin on the ground. At yun nga, kailangan engage talaga yung mga ibang sector, hindi lang national agencies. Nandiyan, ang dami naghihintay lang sa atin, mga ibang champions sa ibang sector. May champion tayo sa local government units. Ang gaganda ng mga kanila, ng mga success stories eh. Hindi lang napapansin dahil hindi traditional. Ayaw kasi natin ang masyadong mga pagtingin sa mga bagay ng problema, mga problematic issues, systemic.
Sir Albert, okay lang, Paul. Yan ang
Sure.
daw.
Yeah.
Kasi magandang magtapos tayo sa isang call to action. Okay lang?
Oo naman,
Yes.
sure.
We feel you, Sir Albert, and your as a generation earlier than us, no? And your intention. Pero to be honest, pagod na rin po kami. I mean, nasa point na ako, 23 ako, pero gusto ko na mag-retire. Okay lang ba yun? Di ba? Eto po, kasi paulit-ulit tayo at pagod na rin po tayong lahat sa, as you've said, puro negotiations. We need actions. Because Philippines is one of the, at least that this is how I tell my other colleagues in the ASEAN, magaling tayo sa policies, especially yung mga policies na nila Senator Loren Legarda before. Ang gaganda. Pero kulang tayo ng implementation. And as I've said, hindi to naratibo ng disiplina, naratibo ito ng sistema at accessibility to alternatives. So can we expect the DNR, specifically the Climate Change Division, to help us hold the National Youth Commission accountable to fulfill their mandate? Kasi yung mga sinasabi ko sa inyo, Sir Albert, for sure, sana kung tama lang yung pag-fulfill ng mandate ng National Youth Commission under this administration, na alam nyo na to at ini-implement na natin. Pero paulit-ulit tayo So, baka yun ang kailangan. Actions. We need actions. We don't need token representation. No more. That's enough. We need to hold our government officials accountable to their mandate. So, okay lang po ba? Are we expecting it from DNR to help us pressure the NYC to get their mandate done?
Yes, Russell, accountability, we're ba na? Talagang very particular naman lahat sa government sa government public servant. We know kung ano ang ibig sabihin accountability. Yun nga lang, we also have to look at may mga di ba, may circumstances ng yung mga iba't ibang circumstances, iba't ibang political setup, iba-ibang mga scenarios. Pero alam mo, ang Youth Commission has been very active din sa climate change. Sumasali sila sa mga technical working group meetings. Yun nga lang siguro, kailangan pang palawigin yung appreciation, yung mismo, yung knowledge about the nitty-gritty, yung mga pamasyado. Para mas
Sir Albert, let me be clear. The National Youth Commission under the chairpersonship of Chair Ryan Enriquez at pagbalik po ni Cardema sa posisyon. Yun po, that's how specific na po yun. Hindi naman po ang pagpuna, hindi po ibig sabihin yon na against po tayo. Pinupuna po natin sila because we want them to step up. Kasi ang gagaling ni Christina, ang gagaling ng mga ni Amadeus, at ito si Paul in their personal capacity took time to organize this. Sayang kung hanggang rhetorics lang po tayo. At sayang po na nanggaling po ako sa margins. Pagod na po kami at pagod na po tayo lahat. At gusto po natin, Sir Albert, lahat ng ninegotiate nyo sa international scene, magawa natin siya sa local. Kasi yun yung kailangan natin. So, let's help each other po. Is that, siguro yung specifics pag-usapan natin after nito, pero very willing to work with everyone to make that happen. And in making that happen, baka kailangan po natin magtawag ng accountability. Ano po? Sige po. Yun lang, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you so much. Napaka-intense clamor to have more action. We appreciate Sir Albert's effort, Russell's effort, Chris's effort, and Amadeus' effort on different levels. We have been battling this fight for quite a long time, and I think our generation is calling for more action and more effects. And I really appreciate your time, guys. Thank you so much for imparting your expertise and your thoughts and imparting your lessons na makaka-inspire, especially sa mga taong manonood nitong podcast natin. So, with that, thank you again, and I hope yung ating mga listeners, mga viewers, mas ma-inspire sila and to join the call of action to fight climate change. And again, let's have a great day, and thank you.